because our deepest wounds often reveal our greatest purpose. All right, welcome to the Chord of Connection. Today's conversation is one I've been deeply excited about because it bridges two worlds I care a lot about: the science of the body and the deeper emotional and energetic patterns that shape how we live inside of it. I'm joined by Dr. Amelia Cohn, a naturopathic doctor and a root cause practitioner who is redefining what it means to truly heal. Through her work at Sovereign Functional Health, she blends functional medicine, nervous system regulation, advanced lab testing, and identity-based healing to help women move beyond symptom management and into true restoration. What I love about Amelia's work is that she doesn't just ask, what symptoms are you treating? She asks, what is the body trying to communicate? And honestly, after both of us going through such a deep somatic and transformational experience together, this conversation naturally became so much bigger than physical healing. We talk about stress, suppression, burnout, identity, intuition, perfectionism, and what it actually looks like to come back into relationship with yourself. This episode is for anyone who has ever felt dismissed, exhausted, disconnected from their body, or like they've tried everything and still don't feel well. So welcome on, Amelia.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for being here, girl. I have
Dang.
had the pleasure and honor of getting to know you in so many different facets. So it's really cool having you on my podcast and getting to showcase what you do, because it's so important, especially in this day and age.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. Yeah, it's great.
Awesome. Yeah, so we'll just kind of lay the foundation. I want to know what originally pulled you into this work.
Mm. Um, well, I started out in getting into energy work and like flower essences for my own healing. Like I had a pretty severe depression when I was younger, just graduating high school. And then, as anybody who's been in that space, like bad things tend to compound on that when you're already in that low vibration. And so bad things kept compounding. And I'm like, what is this? And so I was just so desperate to find anything that helped. And I got pulled into energy work, energy medicine. And it just became this natural progression of learning about the different healing arts. And so all of those things were really helpful to me. And then I started to bridge that with my own like physical healing, getting into yoga and breath work and nutrition. And then when I found naturopathic medicine, I was like, holy shit, this is the umbrella that holds all of my interests. And it was an actual, like a literal calling. I was like, there's no way I was not going to do it. Like no matter the cost, no matter like the monetary cost, the life cost. It was like, this is happening. This is me. Like, I have to do this. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Was there a moment where you realized conventional medicine wasn't asking the right questions?
Oh my gosh. Like, probably from a child, I had known that. I had a lot of bladder issues as a kid. And I remember this very clear, I don't even know how old I was. I was young, but they had this just like horrific procedure that they did where they put a catheter into my urethra, filled it up with water because they wanted to see if that would bleed into my kidneys. And like I just remember being on this sterile table with all these people around me as just this tiny little kid and like experiencing this like horrible pain and discomfort. And that was probably the moment where I was like instant distrust. I don't trust any of you people, like none of that. And then it progressed watching pharmaceutical ads as a kid. I was like, this is ridiculous. Side effects may include death.
Yeah,
So,
literally.
so I just
Yeah.
always was like, what is this? You know?
Mm. Yes, absolutely. It has always been crazy to me too as a kid, where it's like, and they say it so fast, right? It's like, Mike has this, la 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 la, right?
Yeah.
And once I got sober and I really started to take care of my body and understand that food is medicine and all of these things that I didn't get taught as a kid, and then doing somatic work and where you're really getting in your body, there was a moment when I started focusing on it and everything got worse. Have you had that
Mm-hmm.
experience where you're like hyper focusing? Like, for instance, I started healing my gut about 4 years ago, and I got obsessed where I was like looking at ingredients and I was like just so obsessed, and I made it worse.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had that
Yeah,
experience?
I have. It's it's a weird phenomenon, and sometimes, like in natural medicine, they'll say it'll get worse before it gets better. And so sometimes it can be a positive sign because you're like unraveling things, especially in the gut, and you're killing off microbes, and so you get kind of this toxemia or Herxheimer reaction. But yeah, personally, I had that when I was working in my own protocols that I provide. And yeah, things got way worse, and I had symptoms that I hadn't had in a decade come back. And it was like, what is this?
Mhm.
So I had to clear the board, start over, get clear on what was actually going on, and then move forward again.
Yeah. What is your take on I just feel like there's so much out there, and I personally hit a bottom. I guess it's been about 2 years now where I was filled with so much information, and it was like, okay, this is the next right thing to do. This is the next right thing to do. And by the end of it all, I felt so confused. I felt afraid of so many foods, and just like left like not knowing what to do.
Oh
And
yeah.
so, what do you do with clients who come to you who are just feeling super confused and overwhelmed with knowledge and information? How do you direct them?
So I like to test. I like to know exactly what's going on because
Mm.
you're right. There are a bajillion different things out there. And so what's right for you is going to be dependent on your specific physiology. And so we want to know that going into it so that we're not just like, oh, let's try this and let's try that. It's like, no, let's know exactly what we're going to do for you and then move forward with that clarity.
Mm.
So that's really where I like to operate.
Yeah. Do you have them do like an elimination diet first, or is that kind of case to case?
Yeah, yeah. And it's really important because if there are things going on in the gut, which there usually are, especially if there's other symptoms going on, you don't want to continue to feed whatever's in there with the things like the dairy or the sugar. You want to clear that stuff out because that's what's feeding like the bacterial overgrowth or the yeast. So we want to cut those out so that they're not continually proliferating because if you're trying to kill them off, you don't want to feed them at the same time. It kind of two steps forward, one step back. So yeah, absolutely elimination diet.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna have to take you on as a as a coach myself, seriously. Why do you think so many women feel chronically exhausted, inflamed, anxious, and disconnected to their bodies?
Oh gosh, that is
When the
a
labs come
big
back normal too.
yeah. Oh yeah. So there's a couple things with that. The normal labs are what's normal across the population of the country. And as we know, that's not healthy or optimal. So when I'm looking at labs, I'm looking at what's optimal. So a lot of times people will come to me, they're like, my labs are normal. They say my labs are perfect, but I still have X, Y, and Z going on. And then I look at them and I'm looking at patterns. So it's not just the specific markers, it's how those markers interact. So with thyroid health, for example, we look at the ratio between T3 and T4. And while those numbers could be within the normal range, when you look at the ratio, it's like, oh crap, that's bad, or that's off, not bad, but like no wonder you're having symptoms. And so we look at patterns, we look at ratios, and we look at what the optimal number is. So that's
Mhm.
one part of that. And I think that's a huge part of why women still feel burnt out and tired and not, what all the things you were saying is because we're not looking at things through the proper lens, through the most effective lens. I think the other reason is like our society is not designed for women. It's designed for men whose bodies operate on a solar cycle, which is a daily thing. They have consistency throughout the day. Our biology operates on an infradian cycle, so on a monthly rhythm, and our stuff changes every single day. And so if we're looking at like our luteal phase, for example, which is after we ovulate and we're sliding down the hill into our menstruation. So that means our energy is going to be different. Usually they're lower energy. Our workout schedule should be different because we don't have the energy for HIIT and super intensity workouts. Our food choices are going to change. The tasks that we're oriented to are going to change. And so we're trying to operate in a solar cycle and make every day be the same. And then we're wondering like why I can't maintain the same energy throughout the month. Like it just doesn't make any sense. It fucking makes sense according to your biology. That's the way we're designed.
Yes.
So that's a huge part of it. Yeah.
Oh, that is such a great topic because I remember when I was bodybuilding a few years ago, not connected to my cycle whatsoever. I'm, constantly in progressive overload, creating more stress. I remember my body was so inflamed
Yeah.
and I'm like, I'm eating well, I'm meal prepping all my food, and I'm honestly worse than I was before, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah.
And we have this culture of women training like little men, you
Yeah.
know? Seriously, and it's like
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
just is doing more damage for our body than good, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and so that's such a good point. And I actually did this astrology reading with this woman. I won't get too deep into it, but there's multiple different ways to view astrology or charts. There's the Western, there's I can't remember the rest of them, but now there is one that is called the 5D. And it goes back to when, and there's a lot of controversy around this, but there being 13 constellations versus
Oh,
12,
wow. Yeah.
which is really interesting. And the reason I bring this up is because the world is not designed for women. It's not at all. Back in the day, they there was 13 months. And if
Mm-hmm.
you break down the math in that, that's why it's like February has 27 days and this month has, it was before it was 28 days every
Yep.
single month, which is the length of our cycle.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
some fucking dumbass, probably man, went in there was like, nope, this is not, let's take this month out. Let's make all these months crazy. And it feels impossible for us to actually track unless we're, attuned and journaling and tracking our apps and attuned to our body and all of these things. And so I think that I know that we're moving into this space where it is more women taking their power back by being connected to their body, right? And
Mm-hmm.
understanding how the body works and all the things that we didn't learn growing up.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And
yeah.
just the idea of like birth control and putting people or women on hormones.
Oh,
Hormones are such a delicate thing and they're hugely influenced by the gut. And so just putting someone on hormones, it like changes the entire personality. Like there's research that shows that it changes your entire personality. It changes who you're attracted to. So you go on birth control and then it changes the type of man you're attracted to. And then you come off birth control and you try to normalize those hormones. And then all of a sudden you're like, who is this guy? Like, who is this dude? I don't like this guy. And so, you know, it's just one example of how crazy things are. And yeah,
yeah. I've never one time in my life been on birth control ever.
that's good. Good for
I
you.
don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know why. Sometimes I think I was like a healer in a past life. I had to be because from the time I was a little kid, my mom would try to give me medicine if I didn't feel good, and without any knowledge, I would just say I don't want to take that. Like
Mm,
as a little kid, and
awesome.
I
Yeah.
had this like internal guidance system. Like I remember when vaccines, and I have nothing against like vaccines, but I just personally I'm not a vaccine person. But when the COVID vaccines came out, there was something in me that was like, mm-mm, nope,
Hmm.
not doing that. And so
Yeah.
I've always had this like internal thing that I'm not even deeply connected to that just tells me no. It's like, no, we're not doing that. I don't know why, but we're not. So
That's
birth control
awesome.
was something that I just always was like, I'm not taking that for
Yeah.
whatever reason. But now they have like copper IUDs. What is your take on that actually?
Oh my gosh. I have two different takes. My medical opinion is like that is probably a really good way to go if you really don't want to get pregnant and you're very, very serious and dedicated about not wanting to get pregnant because it's not gonna interfere with your hormones at all. My personal take is like I had an IUD and I thought it was personally just awful. It was painful going in, it was painful coming out. I felt it in my uterus. It felt like it was gonna like poke through, and the doctor was like, "That's really unlikely." And I was like, "Dude, it was so awful." And then I never had a period because I had the hormonal one, the Mirema, and I didn't like that either. Not that I love my period and the bleeding and all that, but I respect the cycle and I appreciate having that flow every month and it makes me feel um like I just think there's so much beauty and power being connected to that, to our cycle and the different phases of it. And like now that I'm more aware of how to optimize the different phases. Like it's actually a freaking miracle. And I'm really, really grateful that I still
Mm.
have that flow.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been considering it, but I'm like, no, there's just some
Yeah.
resistance I have around that, but I don't know, maybe I'll
Well,
just stick to the method I've always used.
yeah, yeah. There's actually a really cool birth control. I think it's called Sexy, and it is just a topical. So you just smear it on and it's not hormonal. Yeah. And I think it
Oh,
kills
wow.
the little sperms. So it's
Oh,
pretty
wow.
cool. And
And
their
it's
their
it's
TikTok,
effective.
yeah, their TikTok is pretty good too. They have really great videos. I
You'll have
think
to
it's
send me that.
PHEXXI. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I had no idea. Huh.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a really
Well,
good one.
that's awesome. I'm gonna look into that. I know I kind of took us off the rabbit trail, but
Yeah, that's
what
good.
what are some of the most overlooked root causes you see?
Oh, I think the biggest one is probably gut issues. So, a lot of people just dismiss it of like bloating or they have food sensitivities and they're like, I just avoid those foods. And it's like, yes, and just because you avoid the foods doesn't mean there's still stuff in there that's causing problems and altering your beneficial microbes and which then can alter your mood. So the gut for sure is probably the biggest root cause. Hormonal issues, mood issues. One thing that's close to my heart is painful bladder syndrome. And that's actually starts in the gut, whereas Western medicine only treats the bladder. So let's see, I'm trying to think if there's any others. I think that's probably like the number one. If
Mhm.
in the old school naturopaths were always like, it starts in the gut with just about everything. And
Mm,
I continue to see that being true. So
mhm.
yeah.
How does chronic stress actually impact the body physiologically?
Oh, that's a good one. So we've got so our stress hormone is called cortisol. And there are different phases of the stress response. So we can have like too much cortisol, and that's normal when we're in a high stress situation. The problem comes when our stress doesn't go down or we don't know how to manage things properly. And so that hyper cortisol phase just continues and continues and continues. And eventually that's going to cause a hypo or low cortisol situation. And that's when you drop into exhaustion phase where you're just like, oh, I can't get up. I can't do this. I don't feel like it. I don't want to. And we get that burnt out, low mood, depressed, apathetic phase. So it's this multiple phases in a chronic stress situation that can cause different types of symptoms. And it impacts our immune system. So too much cortisol reduces, it's like a blanket on your immune system. So then that's often why if we are just coming out of like a stressful situation, you end up getting sick because your
Mhm.
immune system just got blanketed. And so you're more susceptible.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, you can also, well, it contributes to the burnout. Trying to think if there's anything else. mood for sure. Just about every system is going to be impacted by too much stress. And that's actually one of the key pieces. So treatments, like you were saying earlier, how you tried to fix your gut. Well, when I'm working with people, I don't go right to the gut. I have to manage the stress first. Because if you don't manage the stress, then we can't fix this. Because this is going to be like your shock absorbing system, your adrenals, which sit above the kidneys, which produce your cortisol. It's your shock absorbers. And so if you're constantly running on high and everything's just crazy and intense all the time, and you're not able to like modulate and manage that, then the gut healing's not going to work. Or the same if you don't have any cortisol and you're in the exhaustion phase, this over here, it's not going to work either because you don't have the energy, the extra energy that you need to put into healing.
Yeah.
It's like the cortisol, I don't want to demonize it because it's a beneficial hormone. Like we need it. It's what gets us up in the morning. It's when it starts peaking at night, it slowly rises. And that gives us the wake up motivation, the impetus to get up and get out of bed and get our day started. So it gives us that when we're in our hyper cortisol phase. We're like ready to go. I can do this. I can push through. I got this. Yeah, let's go. And then, so it's got some benefit too, but we just don't want to do that forever.
Right. Just stay in that zone. Yeah, it's interesting you say that about being sick. So, as you know, I quit my job of 9 years, and my last day was the day before bridge. And
oh, wow.
That week I got COVID. And then fast forward, I go to bridge that weekend. And then the week in between, I got something else.
Yeah, I got that too.
Yeah, we all did. And then the weekend after extreme, I got I had whatever else was going. There was like a stomach or something. It was just like back to back to back to back sickness, but I was coming off of this extremely stressful like work environment where I was depleted. I simultaneously like in chronic stress, but also I found out that I had non-traceable amounts of testosterone. So I was like operating with no testosterone. And, much like the culture we're in, I just found myself drinking more caffeine, which is then messing my adrenals up. And it was just this like never ending cycle of I have to get this stuff done and I don't have the energy to do it,
Yeah.
And by 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock every day, I'm just brain dead, like so much brain fog, just so much fatigue, wanting to, be able to have the energy to go to the gym or do whatever. And it was such a painful cycle that so many of us live in just on the regular. So I'm really, it's a big deal. Stress is huge.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe you can attest to this, but when you say it's like the number one leading cause of like cancer and just all around health.
Yeah, definitely. So the stress is going to I'm going to turn off my beeper here. Yeah, so stress, like I said, it's going to dampen the immune system. So then that leaves us susceptible to viruses, bacteria, and all the things. And the cancer too, because our immune system is designed to deal with cells that are cancerous. But if our system is depleted, it doesn't have the energy to do that. And then that cortisol, it's also you can cause a lot of extra inflammation as well. And so the inflammation piece is huge. And when we drop into, so cortisol reduces inflammation, which is why they put it in joints when people have like arthritis. They'll just put a bunch of cortisol in your joint. And so it reduces inflammation. So temporarily it can feel better. But when we're depleted and we don't have the energy to do things, that means that the cortisol is not there to reduce inflammation throughout the body. And that inflammation just can continue to fester. So that inflammation immune system response, especially if there are like silent pathogens like viruses, for example, those can wreak havoc in the body. Like undiagnosed Lyme can wreak havoc in the body. And if the immune system's not there because of too much cortisol, um, it's going to cause inflammation and disruption and all sorts of problems.
Mm.
So it's a huge one. It's undiagnosed, and especially the low cortisol state. Western medicine doesn't really recognize that as an issue. In naturopathic medicine, we call it adrenal fatigue, but Western medicine's like, oh, that's not real, because they need to go directly to the pathology, which would be Addison's, where your body doesn't produce enough cortisol. But there's this happy medium in between, and that's where I like to function, where you don't have a direct pathology, but things are not optimal, and it makes your life and your quality of life just like unbearable.
Mm, absolutely. It's like a low humming discomfort that we
Yeah,
just get used to, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So you speak about identity-based healing. What does identity have to do with physical symptoms?
Ooh, yes. So there is quite a bit to that. So what I see often in practice is people identifying with diagnoses they've been given. So they're
Mm,
like, I have Hashimoto's or I have fibromyalgia, and that becomes part of their identity. I'm just someone who has this. And then it creates, like, there are pieces to, so whatever continues showing up in our life, we're getting something out of it. Even if it's not what we want, if it's not what we say we want, if it keeps showing up, we're getting something out of it. And that's where the identity work comes into play, because we want to uncover, like, what are you actually getting out of this? What are you actually getting out of holding on to this? And sometimes it's things like, oh, I get sympathy, or yeah, people feel sorry for me, or I get to say no, where otherwise I wouldn't be able to. Um, and then there's other pieces to that where, like, so with thyroid, for example, there is a lot of women who have thyroid issues. And a lot of that comes from, like, there's some physiological reasons for that, but there's also identity pieces that we've been conditioned into as women, of like, don't speak up, just like keep the peace, trying to over accommodate, try to, oh, what is it? Like manage other people's emotions. So all of that is coming through in the thyroid, because we're not speaking up, we're not speaking our mind, we're not sharing our opinion, we're not like speaking our needs. That's a huge one. And so we have to uncover these places when we have our body talking to us from a specific location with symptoms, for current symptoms, like, what's really going on? Where's the mental emotional pieces to that, that we want to shift those patterns to help the body heal and reset, and then support it with the foundational elements of health as
I
well.
love that. That is the most significant bridge in medicine and overall health. Seriously. I mean, we
Yeah.
know that we went through, the somatic experience that we did. And I had kind of dabbled in that stuff before, but to really take that all in such an intensive way and apply it to life and just see how your body changes. I mean, I
Mhm.
am so much more attuned to my body now after that experience, where the other night I was withholding something out of, that part of me that wants to be digestible or not too much, or, whatever, or, the cool girl stage character comes out and it's like,
Yeah.
don't be too much, just be cool with what's going on. And, the beautiful thing about this work is that it happened and then I got to circle back around pretty quickly. Like that night, I had the
Yeah.
conversation with my boyfriend and was able to, but I was able to communicate that. But my gut immediately, like, mine is always in my gut. My gut,
Mhm.
I hold a lot of tension in my stomach and things just really slow down, but I can feel it immediately. And so, it's important to understand where you store stress, or, what does it mean when your gut is inflamed? What does it mean whenever you're starting to have, issues with your thyroid, or, how those things manifest, because they manifest differently for everyone. but
Yeah, absolutely.
it's powerful. Do you care to share your most recent experience with the, you don't have to, but would love
Yeah,
you to share because it was powerful.
yeah, for sure. So I had like out of nowhere, I had this thyroid cyst kind of pop up, and I wasn't sure what it was. And I have an ultrasound in my clinic job, so I was able to ultrasound it myself, and I took measurements then. And then by the time I was able to get measurements, like official ultrasound measurements, like it had went from like 1.5 centimeters to 4 centimeters within like a month and a half or so. So it grew really fast. It was like fluid filled. And I finally got it. I thought I was going to get it drained. And then they ended up not draining it because like it wasn't on the order. So like I had to go through all of these things and then finally got it drained. But it brought up so much around how I was over accommodating in this relationship that I was in, and I wasn't speaking up. So my ex-boyfriend, I would say something, and and just like try to be myself and whatever, and he'd like put the kibosh on that. It's like, oh, you don't need to do that. Or the most recent thing, I was telling him about the 6-month program that I have, and he was like, are there PDFs? You need to have PDFs because people don't want to do this or that. And I was like, no, you don't need PDFs. It's a 5-minute video, at 5 minutes, you do the thing. You don't need to go back to it. It's done. And so like I spoke up about it, whereas before I wouldn't have spoke up about it. And there was something else that I'd spoken up about too. And then he decided that like that was the end of the relationship. And so realizing when I started like speaking my needs and like, no, I actually want you to acknowledge my birthday, and like pushing back on his point of view a little bit, that was too much for him. And so it ended the relationship. But it was all about this self-expression coming through, and like the like the growing stuff that I had, or the stuff that I had like pushed down, was getting trapped in here. And then it finally started to express as a cyst. And there was also some trauma from way in the back that started to express as a cyst. At the same time, I started to express myself more, and then expressing myself more on social media and being willing to be mean and messy.
Yeah.
And, all of this expression started coming through at the same time that this cyst started to express itself. So it was very much getting me to pay attention to this, and getting me to not only the thyroid itself, but the deeper significance behind the expression, the throat chakra, the listening to my body, the listening to the things and the experiences in my life. So it was fascinating.
Powerful. So powerful. Gosh. And for those of you that don't know, Amelia and I are in a small group together. And so I got a front row seat to the whole experience, from beginning to end. And it was just, the body is fascinating. If we don't listen, it will do the talking.
Oh, yeah.
And for some of us, it's not as something as simple as, and that wasn't a simple experience, but like it's a bigger deal, right? It turns into cancer. It turns into, immobility. It turns into all these really extreme cases when we're just unwilling to listen to our bodies. So fascinating. So and we talked about kind of what self-abandonment looks like in the body, right? It's different for everyone, but why do so many women disconnect from intuition when it comes to their health? What do you think?
Interesting question. I think part of it is we're not taught to normalize that experience. We're taught to defer our authority to outside forces, to the professionals. Like that was a huge thing during COVID of like trust the science and trust the authority. And like that's not necessarily true. Like no one knows your body better than you do. And so it's like I said earlier, with our cycles, our different phases, your body's going to want different things during different times of the moon cycle. So trusting that intuition instead of trusting like the nutritionist that says you need 149 grams of protein if you want to make your, your weight and you want to lose weight and da da da. It's like, well, actually, this phase of my month, no, I don't need that. I need more leafy greens. I need more salads. I need more light foods. So yeah, we're taught to defer
Mm.
our knowingness to experts. And that is, it's detrimental. And we're
Mm.
taught that like that it so the whole paradigm of medicine, Western medicine that um is considered normal in this country is it sees the body mechanistically. And so if something goes wrong, then the option to fix it is a drug or surgery. And those are the only two tools that they have. If all you have is a hammer, then everything's a nail. And
Mm.
so the mechanistic approach to the body says that it's just a machine and you have inputs and you have outputs. But that's not true at all. It's a multi-dimensional system. Like we're human and we have the physical, but we're also spirit, and our body inhabits within our spirit. And because the spirit is not something tangible that we can touch, it has to communicate to us in different ways. And it
Mm.
communicates through the body in symbolic form, like knee pain, what do you need? Or a thyroid cyst, like what have you built up? What has continued to grow and fester within your voice and your throat and that needs to be expressed?
Yeah.
So it's a completely different paradigm than
Mm.
than what we're used to. And the
Mm.
same with the vaccinations you mentioned earlier. It's this paradigm of our bodies are weak and frail and they don't have the systems to heal and support themselves. So we need to intervene with this vaccination.
Mhm.
And that's not necessarily true. Our bodies are freaking miracles.
Mm.
Like if you get the stuff that's in the way out of the way, the body heals itself. It
Absolutely.
I love telling the story of my 96-year-old cousin. And he wasn't moving. He was hanging out in his chair all day. He'd use his walker to get into his scooter in his apartment and then scoot down the hall to meals and then scoot back and then use his walker to get back into his chair. That was his day. Those were his days. He'd use his walker into the bathroom. And then finally, they got him into some physical therapy where he started walking. They started moving the limbs, getting him strong again. And so he went from being completely dependent on the walker within just a couple of weeks to being able to walk into a restaurant with just his cane and walk back out again. Like 96 years old, and he was able to recover his strength.
Mm.
Like that's a miracle.
It is a miracle. And I've seen so my mom has chronic pain. She had a hip replacement when she was probably 40. And at the time they were like, you need to get both done. This other hip is almost bone on bone. And she didn't have the money, right? And so fast forward, she just put it off, put it off, put it off. We're talking 20 plus years later, same hip, right?
Mm,
And so, um, it's so counterintuitive for us to lean into movement when I'm in pain, right?
yeah,
But it really is the medicine,
yeah,
is to move.
yeah.
And so yeah, it's which brings up a great point around the somatic stuff, right?
Hmm.
This is what I've learned, and I want to hear about kind of like your biggest takeaways from the experience we went through and the work we've been doing, but is that I always felt like I'd get to the line of like wanting to do something different or show up differently in a certain situation or say the thing, right? I'm going into this situation and I'm like, I'm going to say the thing or I'm going to show up the way that I want to, right? And I would get to the edge and then all my safety strategies would come up, right? Because it's like it's the unknown. I don't know what it's actually going to be like on the other side. I'm pulling from information from my past, which tells me I'm not safe to do this, right? As we know, like parts work. So these younger parts are kind of in the driver's seat doing their thing. And, you know, when you learn how to contain your or to regulate your nervous system as you're walking through this experience, you get to the other side, or I got to the other side of so many experiences, and I was like, holy shit, this is the boogeyman in the closet. This is not real, you know?
Yeah.
And I spent my whole life protecting myself from whatever was going to be on the other side of these experiences, when in truth, like, it actually, on the other side of those experiences, I started to feel physically better. I started to, my my bowel movements were more normal. My ability to speak up became easier in situations. And so, you know, I don't even know why I got off on that tangent, but I think it's really important, just learning the somatic work and trusting yourself to move through the other side, because the other side really is not what we think it's going to be. So
Mhm.
I want to know what your biggest takeaways from doing this work have been in the last couple of months.
I I think the biggest one that I realized, because in a lot of the self-help, energy work, identity level, they talk about the subconscious, and it's the subconscious that keeps you stuck. It's the one that's running the patterns, da da da. And it was the nervous system. That's our subconscious. That's where our subconscious lives. And it's designed to keep us safe, just like you were saying. And so all those safety mechanisms like live in the body, in the nervous system. And when we can regulate that with like simple tools like the stress breath, or like touching your hands, like those simple things that we learned, feeling your feet on the ground. Um, that's how we can move through those subconscious blocks. And it's not necessarily this like magical woo-woo experience. It's very much in the body.
Mm.
And it's the simplest things that we can do of just ah,
Yeah.
to process whatever is coming up for us. And coming
Mhm.
back to this here and now, this physical form,
Yeah.
and acknowledging that, like, okay, I'm here, I'm still safe. Yeah, let's go.
Yes, absolutely. So tell whoever is listening, like, what are you doing? I know you've launched something recently, and would love to hear kind of, I know we've touched a little bit on it, but what is the name? How do we find you? What does your work look like? What are the ins and outs of what you're offering?
Oh yeah. So, one of the things that I'm getting together right now is a thyroid healing podcast or webinar masterclass, and it's directly relevant to what I've been experiencing. And then I know so many other women have experienced, and we're going to be moving through some of the energetics of over accommodating some of those patterns that show up when our thyroid is talking to us. And then also I'm going to provide just some like foundational pieces for thyroid health. So that's one of the things that I'm putting out there. And then the next one I want to do is an HSB healing webinar, because there's like yoga postures that we can do to tap into that and help heal things in the pelvic bowl and the pelvic floor and address that kind of stuff. So yeah, so those are the
Wow.
two that are coming up. And then like my programs, I have a membership model. And so people can work with me in different levels. I have a foundational membership program where people get walked through managing stress, GI healing protocols, and able to articulate or discern what their GI pattern is. So whether that's like a bacterial overgrowth pattern, a yeast pattern, a parasite, or a mixed pattern. Like there's steps in there to help define that, and then treatment process to move through. So that's a 6-month program in it of itself. And it's just like a foundational health reset. So it can help with the energy, with the hormones, all those basic things. Yeah. And then, just kind of the easiest way to get started would be to like follow me on Instagram. I'm going to be doing a lot more with the energy healing piece, bringing that front and center, and then like really supporting it up with the physical foundations and healing protocols in functional medicine.
Amazing. Yes, I'm going to be linking your Instagram on the promo post that I do, and then also when the episode comes out. So if
Perfect.
you want to find her, you find her through me. And I'm also going to ask you at the end what all your accounts are. But before we go into that, I have a deep interest in hearing more about the pelvic floor, um, you know, your education around that, because I have recently realized how much especially leaving my job, I had a massive issue with bracing. Like I was
Mhm.
bracing constantly. And so, yeah, tell me what you know about pelvic floor and how that affects women.
Yeah. Ooh, it's such a big topic, and we hold so much in our pelvic bowl. It's really, we have multiple like diaphragms in our body, and the pelvic floor is the base diaphragm. We've got our breathing diaphragm. And so there are, gosh, where do we even start with this? I think there is like pieces to pelvic floor work, such as learning how to be receptive to penetration, as opposed to like just like forcing that on us. So that's one piece of it. There's also pieces where the bracing, well, it's definitely tied to your jaw. And I think I'm just rambling here, but because there's just
No,
so much
great.
to go into with the pelvic floor.
Yeah. Yeah. No, whatever you have
Like,
to share, I love it.
yeah, like learning how to, there are specific practices like yoni eggs that you can
Mhm.
do to help learn how to be receptive to energy. And like the jade one would be a good place to start, and learning how to hold that. And then like the Kegels, there's not just the like squeeze and release, squeeze and release. There are different levels of Kegel. And so in like tantric practices, you learn how to do these different levels of Kegel, where instead of just like one squeeze, you can feel like the 1, 2, 3, and you can feel it move up. And so this becomes this amazing practice to strengthen the pelvic floor. But then if you're constantly bracing, um, then that's where there might be some relaxation that's needed. And that's where the yoni eggs can help, because you learn how to receive it instead of force it in. Like with tampons, we're just like shoving that tampon in there every month, and the body's like, whoa, 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 what's going on? And like learning how to like work with that area and allow it to receive, which is a huge one for women, like learning how to receive. So that's our place of receptivity. And so instead of having things forced upon us, it's like, how do we receive this gently? And so that's a big practice that can be done, especially if there's of like that tension there, of just working with that yoni egg. And you could do like a rose quartz or a jade, and learning how to receive that. And then when it sits in there, you learn how you can do your Kegels around it, and that will like press upon certain pressure points. Because just like if you have like tension points in here and you find that right tension point, it can release and
Mhm.
relax. And it's the
Wow.
same with it's all muscles in there, crisscrossing beautiful muscles. And so you can
Mhm.
find those pressure release points. And sometimes they're connected to emotions or holding patterns or traumatic experiences. And sometimes it's just stress in there.
Mhm.
And so you can do your own practice with the yoni egg. You can work with a pelvic floor therapist, and they can find those windows. And a really good pelvic floor therapist is going to be able to like help you breathe through the emotions that come with some of those trigger
Mhm.
points or tender points, because
Yeah.
um, that's a big part of, I think, that tension that a lot of women hold in there, is bracing for something that's coming at them,
Yeah.
instead of being able to breathe and be receptive, and then have boundaries about what's allowed into your
Mm.
space and what's not, which is
Yeah.
one of the um, key experiences around HSV, is like is is what's allowed in your space and what's not.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, this is getting me fired up. I don't know if I'm more fired up about how fucked women are in so many regards. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
in terms of like, okay, maybe ask you this. How do men's symptoms show up physically? Because I feel like
Mm.
we have a lot more, we're way more susceptible to those kinds of things than men are when it comes to
Yeah.
stress or, you know.
Yeah. Well, we've got that fluctuating physiology. So there's more places in the line, so to speak, where um, things can get kinked. Uh,
Mm.
but like men have, men experience burnout. I don't think anyone's really designed for this, like 40-hour work week, just push through kind of a thing, especially when it's jobs that you don't necessarily love, or there's conflicting personalities involved and like ego dynamics at play. It just makes things difficult, more difficult. But that's just life. And so everyone has life coming at them all the time, and their symptoms are going to show up different. I think men, a big part of the way things show up is heart related. Like that's one of the number one killers for men. And then also prostate. So heart and prostate. And with the heart, I really see things like closing off, not being emotionally connected, not being able to express their emotions. And then holding on to, there's like resentment develops and like hate develops, those kind of breed themselves, and those all get trapped in the heart, and that contributes to that down the road heart problems.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, this has been such a cool conversation, and my brain is going, and I'm like wanting to, I'm like a researcher. I'm
Yeah, me
the
too.
like human design is I'm a
Yeah.
1-3 profile, so I'm very much the investigator.
Yeah.
And I want to learn, and it's just like this endless well of wanting to know more and more. What is your human design again?
1-6 manifesting generator.
You
Yeah.
have the one. Yep. It
Yeah.
is. The investigator is the person who is just like, I could sit on the computer and go down the rabbit hole for hours and hours.
Yes. I think
So
I think I
good.
needed that, yeah, to go to med school, because it's like years and years and years straight of just like fire hose of information. So I really needed that one to be able to and
Yeah.
and then,
Yeah.
continue to learn, because that's part of medicine, is like continuing to learn and refine your craft. So yeah, I
Yeah.
get you in that regard.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, no wonder you went into this line of work. It's fascinating. It's so important. And it's been really cool watching you kind of step further into your like niche and your pocket. So I just appreciate your time here, and
Yeah.
want you to yeah, let us know, what is your Instagram, if you have a website, anything anywhere where we can find you. Let us know.
Yeah, for sure. I'm currently rebranding my website. So all things are just continually evolving. And then I'll also share, I have a free community that people can come in, and I do lives on a regular basis there. And that's where I'm going to be hosting a lot of my like energy healing things. So like as far as recordings go.
So exciting.
Yeah.
Awesome, girl. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Gosh,
And
thank you.
I look forward to watching how everything, expands for you and getting to have a front row seat. I just appreciate you so, so, so much.
Thank you. This is so delightful. Thank you. Thank you.
May the cord that binds us to one another and to Source remind you that you are never alone, always guided, and always home. Until next time.